Presenting to everyone. All right, here we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to She's the Moment, the video podcast of She's the Day. Today, we are here with our host, Janette Tepas. Say hi, Janette.
Hi there.
You
Welcome
have to
back,
talk.
everybody.
She has to talk or else it doesn't come on the screen. And also, we are interviewing neuropsychologist Dr. Kymberly Larson. She runs an organization called Marvelous Minds, Inc., which deals with it's a family behavioral health center empowering families who are dealing with children who may have behavioral, social, academic, or emotional issues in their development. We wanted to bring Dr. Larson on today, even though she's not officially a Queenager like me. But we, as grandparents or parents of maybe sometimes, in some cases, older teens or maybe college kids, are dealing with other issues when it comes to parenting or dealing with our young people, which is why we wanted to bring Dr. Larson on today. And with that, I was going to show a second here. I wanted to show Dr. Larson's website, which is at marvelousminds.net. And let me see here. I forget how to do this. It's been a while. Anyway, Janette, you take over. And while you're talking, I'm going to show Dr. Larson's
website.
The business. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Ginger. And thank you, Dr. Larson, Kym, for joining us. Part of the reason that Ginger has me help out as a host actually is so that she can be doing the different cameras and changing the screen for all the people watching. So it's a little more complicated than it may seem to have to do all that and talk. So I will be chatting with Dr. Larson. Thank you. And she said to call her Kym. So we were talking with her because it's so timely today that kids are dealing with maybe all new things that our generation, the Queenagers, and even the one before us, didn't really have to deal with. Speaking of health and mental health concerns, is it physical as well, Kym? Your business?
We don't do physical health, but it's often intertwined with mental health. So
sure. It's all connected, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we were saying that it does take a village to raise a child. And as grandparents, we're not generally the primary caretaker, but we believe it takes a village to raise a family or a child. And we would like to be part of the village. So we're hoping that you can help us figure out what a good grandparent role would be in the life of a child who's dealing with anything at all, really, growing up. So can you tell us a little bit what you might attribute to the causes of the emotional and social issues these days, and how early in a child's life might we have to pay attention?
Yes, absolutely. These are great questions, Janette. So I'm glad that you're asking them. So these days, I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic, right? We're all working from home right now for a reason. For children, kids are very resilient and they roll with the punches up to a certain point, right? So with all of the changes that we've been experiencing on like a large community level, we're seeing on a micro level the same thing happening with children. Right. One of the big jobs of childhood is to learn how to navigate relationships. Only our relationships look very different, right? We're talking from our living rooms through a screen. It's very different than sitting on a playground and navigating, like, you took my toy. How do I deal with that? I want to be your friend. How do you deal with that? So from a social perspective, it's very different these days. Same thing with academics, right? Like, our kids are not even pre-COVID, our kids are learning on screens. Okay. Right? There's very little like tactile feedback. There's very little concern for, reading in the way that we've always read. We open a page, we read top down, and then we move over, right? It's completely different, at a neurological level, like how how kids are learning.
So let me just ask a quick question. When you say tactile, what do you mean exactly?
So tactile is touch, right? So if you consider like when you're teaching a child to write back in the olden days, right? When we learned how, we had our hands, we had a writing implement, and we had a piece of paper. So we got feedback from that as we're learning how to shape our letters. We learn how the sound of the letter goes with the shape of the letter. And so we're learning to read and to spell and to communicate based on all those different pathways in the brain, right? Now it looks very different. Do we know if it's better, worse, or the same? We don't know that yet, right? There's no longitudinal data that's going to exist at this point.
Right.
What we do know is, here's an example. We learned to tie our shoes, right? Around kindergarten-ish, right? Preschool, kindergarten, sometimes first grade. We learned that. And there's tactile feedback there to the brain. We have to be able to manipulate those tiny laces with our tiny chubby hands.
And we do the little the rabbit ears.
Yeah, around the tree.
Yeah.
So then came Velcro.
Right.
Now I have kids that too.
Okay.
Right?
Wow.
So then you look at like the development of fine motor skills. We've always looked at things like shoe tying or buttoning as kind of like, developmental milestones.
Yeah.
But that's changing.
Okay. From the very beginning, that's changing. That's changing. So their whole life from the time they're infants, long before they get to teenage or anything, it's all different than what we were experiencing. And it's something that we don't really think about.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things in infancy right now is we learn socialization, we learn about sense of self and sense of other from the time that we're being fed. Whether it's breast or bottle, you're holding a child within 10 inches to your face. You make a face, they respond. There's mirroring, right? This is one of the most important neurological concepts that happens. And it so many other important development is based on that. Right? Only now, unfortunately, we have a lot of this.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So you're not getting that bonding as much. You're not getting the facial expressions,
So are you saying it's because of cell phones?
I'm saying it's a big part of it. Absolutely. Right. We're distracted.
Distractions. Yeah. When you would have normally been more eye to eye, which would affect the neurological health, right?
Yep.
But that doesn't mean grandma's supposed to go over there and say, put down your phone. Because you're looking at your baby.
But it wouldn't hurt to remind new parents, and this is daddies too, right? To remind them that so much of your relationship is being built right now. Even if babies might be a little boring, like don't forget to have that interaction. You're gonna have these experiences and these memories for the rest of your life and the rest of their lives, and they're so fundamental.
Well, so you're preaching to the choir, though. How do we go about doing that without her? I don't know. How would you suggest someone would give a suggestion to a new parent who knows everything? Because
that's where you shift the blame, right? It's not coming from you, but I read this article or I heard this web thing, right? Like, I found it really interesting. Did you know this? And then it's not like you're doing this wrong, right? We can't confront people and tell them they're doing something wrong when we want them to see a different perspective.
Yeah.
Right. Or we want to make it like it's their idea.
Yes. Or that the phone is the criminal, not the child, not the adult, not the person. It's the phone. It's the phone's fault.
Right. But also like
stupid Zuckerberg.
Yeah, it's his fault.
Mark Zuckerberg's fault. Hey, I have a question. Are they hearing this from their pediatricians and, you know what I mean, like other people like that, or
We're
not?
hearing it from the really good pediatricians.
Yeah.
The younger pediatricians, yeah.
Okay.
You know, I think one of the things that's important to remember is like, we're all part of the village, right? We all want the same thing for the child.
Yes.
From a behavioral perspective, if you want to see a behavior increase, right, you reinforce it. That's easier to do than like punishing a negative behavior. So if we use that with our adult children and we see them bonding with the baby, that's
Yeah.
when you step in, not when you
Okay.
see them not.
Okay.
Oh, I love that you're doing that because I just heard this thing, right?
Brilliant.
And you're doing exactly what your little baby needs. I'm so proud of you, right?
Nice.
You're reinforcing what you want to see more of.
We're training puppies after all.
Yes, exactly.
Our role as parents continues.
Always.
Yes, I think of myself as a consultant now, and they can choose or not to take what I would consult. So I don't know. We were talking about the fact that I'm concerned about the fact that our generation grew up with a utopian future, and today's generation kind of grows up with a dystopian look to the future. And do you find that that has had any effect on kids as they are small and as they grow older, or is it just the next generation is always different from the last generation?
That's a really interesting question. And I kind of think about like the research on positivity and negativity. Um, if you are always positive and you always expect the best, you're going to be disappointed a lot, right? Yeah. If you're always negative, you're kind of in this like crappy place. Can I say that?
Yes.
You're in this like bad place sometimes, and sometimes you get, you know, a nice surprise. But it's the people who are really in the middle who are more like rational. This is real life. There's some awesome stuff and there's some not so awesome stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that as long as we're helping our kids see both sides, is this a bit more dystopian, you know, than our generations that saw? Yeah, but it's also, you know, we have this interconnectedness through technology that we never had before. So like, how cool is that?
Yes.
Can you imagine going through the pandemic if we didn't have Zoom and FaceTime and email and all those things that we didn't grow up with?
Right. I'd rather not, although they did it, but I'd rather not.
Like, I mean, how isolating, that's true dystopian, you know, like ideology.
Well, I think during the last pandemic in 1911 or something like that, they didn't have all of this, and there was then a big. Wasn't that sort of what they think led into the Roaring '20s? You know, everybody went a little bit
nuts,
over the top, a little bit over the top.
Yeah.
So that these connections are so helpful to us. I assume they are for the kids too.
Well, they also had polio in the late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah.
Or maybe before that. I mean, it was more in like the 30s and 40s. I think my mother said she remembered having to do school from home by the radio because of polio outbreaks.
Okay. And so what do you think would be the cause of some of their emotional and social issues? Because I think our society here in the US, we're so fortunate because our society of affluence offers some stability, but it doesn't bring psychological health. So we have all the connections and the internets and this, you know, the ways that we're able to do school virtually and have meetings virtually, and but it doesn't necessarily do psychological health. So do you think there's something that we besides just watching that, can you give another suggestion for maybe how we can be of help to the families, our families and kids' families, to be watching for things?
So I think that the interconnectedness is the thing that we can do.
Okay.
Right. if you are connecting with your grandkids, whether it's via FaceTime or through the picture window or whatever way that you can, if you're continuing that and growing your relationship, that's the best thing you can do, right?
Endorphins still come flowing through?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. That's an awesome question because, like, if you imagine something very clearly, very, if you can visualize something that is as close to the reality as possible, you're using those same neural pathways,
Okay.
right? So you're getting that dopamine, you're getting the endorphin dump, right? You're getting those things.
That's
So
good.
yeah, that's a really important concept. What we're not getting is like the physical touch, the sensory piece, right? There's still missing elements, but
Mhm.
there's still so much that we can get.
Very good. So would you say that for like say kids that are shy, is it a social issue that we need to be concerned about in our extroverted world?
There's nothing wrong with being shy or introverted. We need those folks too,
Yeah.
right? They're our balance. Um, just like in the pre-COVID world, those are kids that we might need to push just a little bit more, that
Okay.
we might need to teach more explicitly some social skills. We've got so many neurodivergent children out there that I think the most important part is teaching our kids and our grandkids that, like, everybody's different. Some people are comfortable with this, some people aren't. Some people take a little longer to warm up and to feel, comfortable enough to say, "Will you play with me?" Right? That's a really hard thing for some kids, and some kids just do it naturally.
Is that what you mean by I've never heard of neurodivergence. I mean, it's two words that make sense together, but I'm guessing
Sure.
what does it? So I'm not wrong.
Yeah, so when we talk about neurodivergence, we're talking about kids with ADHD, with learning disabilities, with autism, with anything that kind of makes you look at the world a little bit differently, right? We have a set of skills and features, so to speak, in a neurotypical brain,
Right.
right?
Okay.
But probably little less than half of people don't have that same kind of set. They're neurodivergent,
Okay.
right? Maybe they incorporate information coming in differently. Like, we
Okay.
look at the sensory kids, the ones who are always doing this,
Uh-huh.
right? They're taking in information differently. It's really a lot for them to maybe go to fireworks.
Okay.
Maybe it's painful for them because it's scary.
Well, and so maybe, in fact, I mean, as you say this, I've been saying to a certain degree that I think we're kind of all on some kind of spectrum because no two people are alike. So this is, but are there a big bunch of us that are kind of basically the same and then divergence? Or is everybody a little divergent?
So can I say yes and yes? I think
Okay.
it like depends on, in my world, I'm talking about diagnoses. I'm not talking about the um
Regular. So,
the spectrum of what's normal, right? What's normal is huge, right?
right.
I'm talking about this little tail over
Okay.
here where where we might need to do some, like, functional changes for them. We might need to change the environment for them to feel safe and comfortable. But yeah, I mean, we're all different. We're all beautiful little snowflakes that have our different shapes and sizes, and um but some are more different than others. Some are snowballs. So
Okay.
Well, just saying that, what are the things that are behavioral or emotional that we should be watching for from our grandchildren that would be kind of classified as a developmental difficulty?
yeah, I mean, that's the big question, right? Like, where do we find that line? Um, you don't want to be, like, comparing your kid it's out loud, right?
Okay.
Or your grandkid, right? We don't want to use those comparative
Parameters.
constructs, right? But when you look at what are the other kids their age doing, and is this kid falling behind a little bit? Are they not able to run up the stairs, 1 foot after the other? Are they still going dun 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 when everyone else is doing, um, that might indicate a developmental delay, right? If everybody else their age is talking and they're not, right, then that's going to be indicative of, we go to a speech path and we check it out. Maybe they're just a late bloomer, maybe there's articulation issues or whatever. But we do kind of use comparison to see, like, what's typical at this age.
So would you suggest maybe, so the parents are kind of doing that and we're standing behind the parents and kind of going, just maybe say we'll be there for them rather than going, I think he's falling behind. We'll just be like, oh, I'll be here for you if you have any appointments to help, or it's such a delicate line.
It
to-
is.
You notice they're not speaking words right. This has actually happened with me. It's not, can't say the letter R and I'm hearing it, but is it my place? It's not my place to say, because they're going to hate me and not talk to me for a year and keep me away from the ground. And I know it's happened.
Right. And that's not worth it. Right.
Right. So maybe just be very, very delicate about that kind of thing, but paying attention and, pretty much supporting whatever the parents are doing. Right.
Absolutely. And also don't forget there's ways of saying things without saying things, right? So if you were like my friend Millie,
Yeah.
her kid is struggling with blah, 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 and they went to this thing. Have you ever heard of that? So you're not talking about your grand,
yeah,
right?
Okay.
But kind of sharing a story.
Okay.
Things are so different now. I never heard of autism.
Yeah.
Like, do you hear about that these days? Like, play dumb.
Well,
Like,
tell us about Marvelous Minds, because it sounds amazing, and I'm so fascinated that you are working on so many levels with the kids that you work with. So parents bring kids to you, and you are a one-stop shop, sort of.
That's the idea of it. Are we still on? My computer just went
I show
wonky.
your office there.
Sorry,
I
wanted to show people your beautiful office and how it's like coming into someone's home. It's not a clinical office, really. It's really beautiful and comfortable and child-centric. So I wanted to show. I have a few pictures of it. So
yeah, that's what we're going for. People don't feel comfortable in doctors' waiting rooms. I don't. Like, it's so sterile and clinical, and it's anxiety producing, right? My whole job is trying to make people not feel as anxious, not feel as worried, to feel comfortable in their own skin.
That is so logical. I can't believe it didn't come up like 2 centuries ago.
Right?
So logical. Well done.
It's like lab coats, right? Like, we're all proud to get the lab coat. But
I never had one.
I always wanted one, but like I never wear it unless it's like science night at the grade school, like I think it's the only time I wore one. But it's so Marvelous Minds was born from my work with kids in on the autism spectrum and sick children. And I watched how many hours these parents spent driving from one therapy to another therapy, to a doctor's appointment, to a specialist appointment. All of that time could be spent bonding with their kids. Right. It could be spent playing games or ice skating or swimming or just hanging out, right? Yeah. And so there's all this like lost opportunity for the things that your kid needs most.
Right.
When they're the kids that need those things the most. And so I really wanted to be able to offer kind of like a community mental health where, I'm a neuropsychologist, so I do the testing.
Okay.
I determine if a child meets criteria for ADHD or autism or learning disabilities, anxiety, depression, whatever. And then I say, okay.
Yeah.
And then I get to say, like, here's what you need to do to make life easier. And the more of those things to do that I can have under my roof, the easier it is for the families, the more time they have for fun.
Right. So what all does it include over there? So you do the testing. Is that like blood testing or testing like on a computer screen? I was going to say paper, but it wouldn't be a paper, would it?
I use a lot of paper.
Oh, you
I
do?
absolutely do. I use computers too.
Okay.
But the best way to see what's going on in a child's mind is not an MRI. It's like how creative they are, how they interpret a picture or how they draw something or how they tell a story.
Okay.
So I do testing. We have therapy like psychotherapy, art therapy. We do parent education programs, which I'm
Great.
super proud of because that's typically the missing link in pediatric mental health.
That makes good sense too. Yeah.
Yeah.
understand
So we have all sorts of services for the kids, for the teens, for the parents, for the family together.
Grandparents.
And you're a little different than
Grandparents.
places, right?
I'm sorry.
Your business, your practice is somewhat different than most, right? Because you're all
Absolutely.
together. And so rather than going from office to office on assorted days, do you even arrange it so that they can do several things at the same, one after the other, or
We do our best.
Yeah.
Ideally, it would be like super smooth like that, but sometimes it doesn't work out. But we do try to get like siblings in at the same time and
Okay.
or parent and child.
So it's all family counseling is available and teaching parents, that's a huge help.
Yeah.
And so who does that? What kind of person? A neuropsychologist.
Well, typically a therapist or a coach is going to do the parent training. I've just found as I've gotten older and as my children have grown up that I really enjoy that part. I love working with the littles. My knees don't, So, but I've really found kind of a passion for helping parents navigate like typical problems in the home or for special needs kids, some really intense issues in the home. And I love being able to help them enjoy their home life better.
That's great. That's great. I think it sounds amazing and really helpful. Are you an unusual practice away from raising a child at this point because they're all grown ups and have kids? Is yours a normal practice? Are you the only one of its kind?
I think that we were the first of our kind, especially in this area. There's a couple clinics that are popping up that are also multidisciplinary, which I think is wonderful. I really think it's the way it should be for families. Otherwise, it's just so hard.
Yeah, and it seems like like if it was a jigsaw puzzle, there were too many missing pieces.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to put all the pieces together, moving parts everywhere, I would guess. And so it's good to have all the pieces of the puzzle, right?
I think so. I mean, it's working so far. We've been around for 5 years, almost 5 years, and we've grown just exponentially.
Okay. And are you making any plans to come into others? So you're in Glen Ellen, that's central Chicagoland suburb. And is there talk about with other places, or will you be expanding, or
maybe do you do virtual and also what age do kids age out at your facility?
Good question.
So you can't age out of our facility. I've been working with some of the same kids since they were little, and they're now like in their 20s. They're still going to come, and I'm hopefully going to meet their kids. That's kind of the beauty of, at different stages of our life, we struggle with different things, and we'll always be there as people grow through different stages. So I see kids as young as 3 for like behavioral stuff for testing. I can do younger than 6, but most of the time I don't recommend it.
Oh.
I think there's a lot of interventions you can try before you try to sit down and test a child.
Okay. That's interesting. It's fascinating, really. And do you think the pandemic has swamped your industry as well, besides just, but yeah.
Absolutely.
need to pay extra attention to coming out, hopefully, fingers crossed, coming out of the pandemic and helping, maybe even modeling well with our grandkids,
Absolutely. Yeah.
with them. I'm going to pull out the papers and the scissors and do the stuff eye to eye and all that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And even things like modeling emotional regulation, like going, "Oh, I'm really frustrated right now. I might need to step away so that I don't yell. Nobody likes yelling, grandma." Right? Like, and modeling that. And
Okay.
that is so powerful for kids to know that they can say, "I'm angry," and it's okay.
Okay.
Or like, this is really funny, but that might hurt somebody's feelings. So let's just keep it between us, right? Teaching those kind of like emotional regulation skills. You do that by modeling.
Things that they probably would have picked up on the playground, but
yeah. Yes.
And maybe bullying is going away a little bit because it's harder to bully somebody if they're not in person.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of cyber bullying, and
There
it
is.
is.
Oh God. Yeah.
It's
Bizarre.
rough.
Yeah. Okay.
It
Interesting.
might actually be worse in some ways with the severity, especially with the older kids.
Really? Okay. Yeah. Good Lord. It's a terrible shame. And yet it was so out of my mindset.
I know. What a world we live in these days with social media. I mean, when we raised our kids, we didn't have to deal with social media and all that. And it's just a whole different ball game nowadays.
And how old are your kids, Kym?
So my kids are 15 and 17. I've got one graduating and one starting to drive. So it's a crazy year.
Congratulations and condolences on the
Thank you. Thank
I'll
you.
Sure to stay off the road if I'm in town while they learn to drive.
Probably a good idea.
And you know what? I found their reflexes are better than ours, to tell you.
That's true. That is true.
Right. Always look at the rainbow. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for spending a little time with us. It's so interesting to hear about, and thank you for the suggestions on how we can help our families and our grandkids, and not be pushed out of the way because we're too pushy or nosy, and what to look for, because it is so different. And I don't want to be constantly terrified or thinking that my kids are in this horrible place. Yeah, I want them to find happiness and still have hope for the future, of course. And I have the same, I have hope for their future. And so we really appreciate you talking us through some of the stuff. It's a little bit of counseling for the other generation.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was great. And if there's ever questions, you know how to find me. And I'd be happy to field any questions for people.
Yeah. Just to remind everybody, it's marvelousminds.net. If they're looking for more info, the website is just loaded with all kinds of great content.
From Dr. Kymberly Larson. It's Kym, right? BEY.
Yes, thank you.
And so that when people are looking her up, that's how they spell her name. And what a great source you are. And I just love the concept of it. I hope everybody learns from it and can create more and more of these throughout, the U.S. at least, if not the world.
All right.
Helping us through all of this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ginger.
You're so welcome. And thank you both. What a great session. All right. I'm going to end the recording. And thanks for everybody at home who's listening to this or watching it too.
Thank you so much. Bye. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Janette. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, Ginger.
Wait.